everyone, what up? Welcome back to Top Tier Arcade. My name is Steve, and we're back in the car because we're going back on tour. And this one's actually I'm very, very excited about because we're going to actually be hitting up Drano's Arcade. Now, that's not really his title per se, but it's the only thing that I know to call it. Because Adriano's not only going to be letting us film, but he's been actually very kind enough, and I've kind of forced him, to take on my Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles pinball playfield restore. And he's never done one before, so he's like, Steve, it's going to be a challenge, but honestly, man, his work is amazing. He's one of our pinball guys. He's a great guy, great enthusiast, and we made out a deal, and he's like, all right, Steve, let's do it. So, as you can tell in the in my top tier tech, that I'm restoring the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle pinball, and this is a huge part of my game room that I wanted to get working. So he's gonna hopefully, you know, finish up the artwork on the playfield, make it like new. Hopefully, I can then put all the parts together and get this working. So forget about that for a sec. Let's jump to Adriano's game room, or Drano's game room. He's really big in the scene in the Greater Toronto area and abroad. Amazing games, amazing restore, and in great shape. And I can't wait to check out his place. And there's going to be a few guys coming in later, having a little party here, and I've been humbly invited, you know, just to check it out and to talk to these guys. So very excited about that. Well, we'll talk to Adriano and see, you know, how he got into the hobby, because I've never really asked him, and what plans he has for his future arcade. So let's check out Drano's Arcade, let's play some pinball, and let's get right to it. Alrighty, we've arrived at Adriano's. Adriano, what's up, man?
Hey.
Good to see you.
How's it going?
Good, man, good. Alright, so I've prepped everyone in the car what's going on. Thank you for having me, of course. We have some snacks here. I know he's going to be hosting. I just dropped off my playfield. So, Drano, really quick, what are we going to be doing? Like, just a 2-second glance, what do you think you're going to be doing with this? Because I know that's the spot that's the hardest one.
Yeah, so this playfield is probably hard to see on the camera, but it has full Mylar coverage. Obviously, in this area by the ramp entrance, the Mylar has been beat up to the point where it's caused wear. The game probably wasn't cleaned regularly. I think when you first pulled it out, it was pretty dirty.
It was, yeah.
So what happens is obviously the ball catches all that dirt and it starts acting like sandpaper in this area. So because it is full Mylar, we have to decide whether we want to do a full removal, or whether we want to sort of use the art as an area to sort of trim off and then do more of a spot touch up. So what I'll do is I'll probably do a few tests back here in the upper Mylar to see how easily it comes off, and if any playfield damage occurs during the removal where it's easier to fix. If it comes off really easily, then we could attempt to do a full strip, and then I'll do my touch-ups, whether by a mixture of airbrushing and some hand work, and maybe some what do you call it, water slide decals maybe for some of the text and stuff, and then do a full clear coat.
Wow.
Now the back is still populated, so in this one, if we're not going to do a full strip, I have boxes in here that I can lay playfields into. I have a few over there that are being worked on.
Cool.
And then that sort of helps to protect the bottom, and I cover off all the holes. But yeah.
Cool, man. Yeah. So why don't we start? So thank you again for having us. People are gonna be arriving. I came early. Why don't we start with your garage? So what about the Donkey Kong? Can you tell us about it? Yeah. So I decided that I wasn't really a vid guy early on, but I did want to have a few for the kids and for people coming over, and I always loved these really these classic Nintendo cabinets. Yeah. So I decided, not being able to find one for a reasonable price, that I was going to make my own. I have the facilities at work to make some of this stuff. So a friend of mine lent me a really beat up Popeye, I think it was. Yeah, makes sense. Same cab, yep. Yeah, and the Popeye was it was a junker, so he let me rip it apart, and I measured it, I drew everything in CAD, and we cut all the parts on a CNC. When friends started realizing what I was doing, they asked if they could have one, and I ended up making 2, 3, and eventually ended up being a run of like 12 or 14. Oh, wow, cool. Yeah, so we painted them, did all the T molding, and then I just basically gave it to everybody in the color that they wanted, and then let them do whatever they wished. I decided to put originally a 16-1 in this one, and then later on upgraded to a 412-in-1. So all the vertical classics are in here. Cool. And then a buddy of mine was cleaning up an old Galaga, and I really loved
that midway cab as well.
Why don't we go to the Galago? So what's the story about this same type of deal? So Buddy just gave it...
Yeah, so he was doing a vertical setup, which is not original for a Galago. Of course, this would have been a vertical.
Yeah.
So he's doing a horizontal. So I said it would be perfect because I had all the verticals in the Donkey Kong, and so then the Galaga I wanted to put all the horizontal games. There were some fighting games in there too, so I thought for home it would be kind of cool for the kids. The what do you call it?
The bezel.
The bezel.
Yeah.
Obviously had to be touched up. So he gave me the artwork, and I touched it up so that it was horizontal rather than vertical, and we printed it, and he did all the rest, and that's it. Yeah. So basically, just to have a good selection of horizontal and vertical games here.
More for the kids, right?
More for the kids and the occasional party. People come over, they want to play them. I restored a Super Sprint, which is at my office right now, and that's really all I have for vids.
Cool, man.
Yeah.
Well, let's get to the pins. So obviously there's the Fathom.
Yeah. So I mean, the garage is really my workshop. So I call these the Walking Wounded. So whatever game is being worked on or sort of a project game gets lined up in here. Or a game that I don't have anywhere to slot in at the moment. The Fathom used to be a Fireball 2, and I decided to try my hand at modifying the Fireball 2 into a Fathom, so it's sort of a Franken-Fathom,
cool,
if you will. So I was able to, I'm just waiting on some parts from another collector, Chris, and then I can do the playfield, but right now the cabinet's all been converted. I've got all the schematics so I can check that the wiring, any differences in wiring from the Fireball 2 to the Fathom can be addressed. But they're very similar in terms of when they were made, so they have a lot of the same parts.
That's cool.
Yeah.
What about the Quicksilver?
Quicksilver I picked up in the U.S. I was kind of on a classic Stern kick over the last couple of years, and I was really looking for Quicksilver, Stargazer, and, some of the harder to get ones. My first was a Meteor. And on the way back from Allentown, I picked this up from a guy down there. Which is Ty Laurie, you told me, which, again, I follow on YouTube, and we talk sometimes on Twitter, so very cool. Yeah, so that's pretty cool. Small world that you know Ty. So we did a little diversion on the way back from Allentown a couple of years ago, and he was in upstate New York, in the wrong direction, of course. We went. I traded him a game and some cash for this. And after getting this, another friend of ours had a spare playfield, which is in similar condition to the one you see here. Right. But I managed to restore it. Oh, so, yeah. And I came up with an interesting technique, which I hadn't tried before. We kind of airbrushed all the green in these areas to hide all the wood. And I did all the black and all that stuff using stencils and some airbrushing. But then the lettering is really what caused me a lot of fits. So I had originally scanned in all the lettering and recreated it in Illustrator, and I found a place that could create custom rub-on transfer decals, kind of like when you were kids, you kind of like let yourself. Yeah, cool. Yeah, and they were able to create it in custom colors. So I got a Pantone guide, and I matched the color to the existing text, and they made me this. So all the text you see around the middle here, in fact, most of the game, I think I ended up doing all the text over so that it all matched. I just rubbed it on, and then cleared over it a few times and smoothed it, and I was able to kind of get it back to where it should be. Very cool. Yeah. So very cool. This is so that's why this game is here. It's due for a playfield swap along with a couple of others I have to do right now, Space Shuttle and a few more. Cool, man. Special Forces. So Special Force, again, I'm probably one of the few people that love these Bally 6803 machines. They're not very well loved. I think they're considered turds by many. But this is Dennis Norbin's first design, and it's actually a really innovative game. I think they were able to do a lot with the few funds or the limited budget that they had back then. So Dennis did a really nice job on this, and it's just for $300. I think I got it US. Back oh wow, that's crazy! Yeah, and I even searched out the alternate back glass for this game, which is right there, right? Which is only sold in the US market through, in the European market through Bally Wolf, which was their German distributor. Now, you said the reason that they did that is because this was too close to war, and the Germans didn't want that. I think the German distributor at the time felt that it was too militant, right, and wouldn't sell well in their market. So they had a lot of power as a buyer, as a big distributor back then. So they were able to then do their own artwork. And it's a really rare piece to find. I actually found that when NOS in Australia, of all places. Wow. The guy had bought a lot of glasses from Germany. Huh. He ended up having that one in the lot, and he knew that I was looking for it, and he sold it to me. Probably worth more than the pinball machine. I don't doubt. Yeah. Cool, man. Oh, wow, the shadow. Yeah. Well, and yeah, so Shadow just happens to be here because it was at my office. It was one of those games that I had gotten, and I had cleaned it up and got it working, but I had never really spent much time on it.
Right.
And then I decided to bring it home, and I thought I'd finish up what I hadn't done yet. So I took off all the plastics, which on this game was a bit of a pain, and I took off some mylar that was around the slings, and all the wire forms and metal I had plated by by Mike Chestnut, who's now passed away, but I think his business is still running. One of the best platers in the pinball field, anyway. And yeah, we went with gold for all the metal work.
Very
and,
cool.
yeah, did a few things to it. Cleaned it up. I took off the original European door, which you'll see there is a 1-slot door.
Oh, cool.
Put on a new door. Mike at the time also chromed my shooter, gun, shooter, gun.
Yeah.
And I did a few other things like the custom backboard decal. You see some drop target decals on the
Yeah,
bottom.
that's right. The brick.
A few little things. These games are always plagued with wear at the sanctum. So it creates a little bit of a divot there where the magnet grabs the ball and sucks it in. So if anybody who's familiar with the game knows the issue. This game had that as well, but the rest of the playfield was really nice. What I did, just because I was in sort of a hurry to get it, you know, into the queue or into the lineup, I put some Bondo in there, but I didn't bother trying to airbrush all the gray because I didn't want to touch up this playfield. And a gentleman on Pinside was making these really cool little decals that you can see they tie into the artwork really well.
Right.
So that little green dot just covers up my repair.
Oh, sweet.
Yeah, and he gave me about a dozen of them. So I think it's perfectly fine for for this game. It's not something I want to go crazy on.
Makes sense.
Yeah. So this one will be going down into the basement eventually once I get a slot. It's pretty well done. Shouldn't be up here anymore.
Makes sense. Next is I've never even heard of the Heavy Metal Meltdown.
Yeah, so Heavy Metal Meltdown. So again, because Special Force started my whole love affair with the 6803 games, and I loved what Bally was doing with this really dog of a system that they had to work with. I think they were doing a lot of cool stuff. And I ended up getting, Strange Science and Black Belts. I ended up selling those, but I found this one. I was looking for it. It's even within the 6803 lineup, it's fairly uncommon. And a friend in Quebec had seen this and told me that it was available, sent me pictures of it. This is a rather unique example because when I saw that it had the standard generic Bally artwork, but I know that Heavy Metal Meltdown was one of the few games where they had done custom artwork on it. So I thought maybe at the time they had dropped it into a standard cab. Maybe the original cab was damaged or something.
Right.
I didn't really know what was going on until the game arrived, and I realized that it had a drop target blocking the ramp. Now I apologize, this game is in as-is condition. I have new ramps, I have stuff to restore it, but I haven't touched it yet.
So you're saying that drop target never existed in the on-location ones, really?
Yeah, so it kind of piqued my interest. I didn't know what was going on, and then I read up a little bit on it, and it turns out that this was a prototype feature that never made it into production.
Wow.
Only a handful of games exist with that hole in the playfield, and you see the 5000. What they did later on is they just kind of sealed over the hole, they removed the 5000, and they left a little starburst in it. But this game, when it arrived, it had all the mechs intact, and if I were to lift up the playfield, you'd even see that all the solenoids, including the flashers, all the wiring is sort of broken with a fuse connection. Mm-hmm. So all the solenoids are fused. Another element which didn't find its way into the production machine. So really cool feature. But what happened, I guess, at the time is they realized that this was not going to make it into the production games. I even reached out to the original programmer. I managed to find him through LinkedIn.
Cool.
Raymond Merchant. He'd been out of pinball for years, ever since he left Bally, and he worked with David Gottlieb and company and all that kind of stuff as well. He had no idea where the original code might be or what it did. All I had to go on was this original, almost like typed up rule card, which was stuffed under this clear window here. I think the production games had final artwork which was screened on. I'm not 100% sure, but I believe they were. This one had a clear window, and I found that these rules didn't make any sense for a traditional game because they included the target.
Right.
So I spoke to a gentleman who's a programmer who's able to help me get into the code and modify it so that I could get this game working as close as possible to what it would have been like back in the day. So I'm probably the first person to ever play this game.
I guess the way it was intended.
The way it was intended to be designed ever since it left the Bally factory.
Wow, really? That's really cool. So that's almost like a one-on-one piece.
Yeah, so there's a little, you can't see it, but on this side there's a little stamp from Aladdin's Castle, which was Bally's own franchise of arcades.
Cool.
So they must have used this game within their own location to test. Maybe the targets were breaking a lot or something like that. Steve Young from Pinball Resource was really good about helping me to recreate the targets. What else? Yeah, that's pretty much it. I put a little thing up on Pinside so you can kind of see the progress. But yeah, I think we've got it working more or less how it should now. And so this will end up being in the queue to be restored and enjoyed.
Cool, man.
Yeah.
Let's move forward. So I know you do. You also like some jukeboxes. So
yeah,
just a quick thing about this juke. What's this about?
So for a couple of years now, I've been trying to find a 200 series Seabird.
Yeah.
Always had a love affair with these, and I thought I would try my hand at restoring one. Went down to Allentown this year, and I managed to find 2 of them. So over there, there's a 100, it's a Model G, and then over here is the 200. And I ended up getting that one first, and then saw this one, so I ended up buying both. This one was a little bit beyond my skill set because it is solid state and needed a lot of work. So I found a gentleman up in not far from here, who was able to, near Oshawa, who was able to help me get it running perfectly. And so now it just sits here so we can enjoy it while I'm working in the shop.
Sweet.
And I'm going to be restoring that one, which is a little bit more electromechanical, so I think this one's more within my skill set. This one will be getting more of a cosmetic cleanup as well. I've got all the parts for it. And this one will probably go inside the house, into the family room once I get it all running. Beautiful.
What about this? This is actually very, very cool. I've seen something similar like this in the Pinball Hall of Fame, but you're saying it's very different.
Yeah, well, this is it's a pitch and bat. So I think in the 50s and 60s, Williams was really known for... They weren't really known for pinball.
Right.
I think the manufacturers that we know today, back in that era, they all had their own specialties. Gottlieb was the undisputed king of pinball, and certainly there was Chicago Coin and some others. But Williams was really more known for horsey games. We've seen sort of like the horses racing across, as well as pitch and bat. Williams himself here, he patented the Running Man unit.
That's cool.
So you'll notice that only Williams games will have the Running Man unit, so these will move around the field. And I think Bally was famous for doing bingo machines in this era too. So they made a lot of pitch and bats. This is a Williams deluxe official baseball. It's the only one ever made with 3-dimensional figures. Most of them just had a little flap on the playfield. The ball would sort of appear from underneath the flap, and then you would hit and try to hit different singles, doubles, strikes, outs, whatever.
That's cool.
In this game, the holes in front of the players will either light up or be turned off, and if they're turned off and you hit it, you have an out, and if it's lit, you get a single, and then if you get hit any of the other holes, you get whatever's listed there. But yeah, it's kind of a unique game. I always wanted one, managed to find one in slightly rough shape, and I restored it. Brought it down to Pinfest a couple of years ago as well. So the plan for the garage eventually, once I get through a lot of these projects, is to have basically my woodworld collection or older EMs in here, only along the wall, along with my jukeboxes, and solid state and modern pins would be
in the basement. Yeah, I thought so.
Yeah. So it's just brought up now just to make a little bit of space, but eventually it will sit over there where Heavy Metal Meltdown is, and then I'll sort of run a chronological series of old wood rails that I currently have in storage.
That's cool. And then this is just, I guess, your, if you want to lead me to your game room, this is just your workbench and all the tools, huh?
Yeah, so I got a workbench here. It's usually a little brighter, of course, but yeah, right now everything's a bit of a mess. Over here I've got a rotisserie with Cactus Canyon. It's been sitting here for a little while. And there's a space shuttle ramp on it, but you can kind of see. There's a really dirty, filthy Cactus Canyon. The game's in pieces, and I have all the stuff to convert it to Cactus Canyon Continued, which is running the new code developed by Eric Pribke. So that'll be an exciting one. I've kind of gone away from DMDs a little bit. I think I have the ones that I like, and I'll keep. And this is the last one that really needs to be addressed, and then everything else is going to be solid state or EM. Yeah.
Cool, man.
Yeah, so
do you want to lead us to your game room,
please?
please?
Let me just shut the door here, and I'll
sure.
Down. All right. So not too bad of a run. Most games I can take in through the garage and just down 4 stairs.
This is just, I guess, just reproduction, just just artwork and whatnot?
Yeah, so Pinsanity is a tournament that's run out in New Jersey every year. It used to be in spring, and I think now it's being run in the fall. But the organizer, I think, is a graphic designer, or if he's not, he should be, because he does these.
Awesome.
He does these beautiful posters.
Awesome.
And I think the first poster that he did, this one here, he only made a handful, maybe like 50 or 100 of them or something like that. And they became very collectible. I was very fortunate to get on a second run that he did, because I only caught on once he had been running the tournament for a couple of years. So I managed to buy original prints of the 2013 and 14, and then obviously later on the newer ones.
Is there a 2017? Because this is 16. Huh?
So yeah, it hasn't happened yet. So I'm assuming there will be. So I have allowed enough space on the wall to at least put maybe another one.
Cool.
And if I want to go all the way to the floor, I could probably get another row of 3. But I just think they're beautiful. I mean, I'm in design, so I kind of really appreciate them too.
Looks so cool, man.
And apparently there's a bit of a story, sort of man versus machine, and then aliens come and take the machine. The machine has to be recovered from space. Then you travel back in time, and now it's the dinosaur era.
Really? So there's a continuity between.
It's sort of, yeah.
So cool.
Yeah, it's not obvious, but in speaking to the developer, the organizer, there is, and then this is sort of like a, Uncharted, below the sea, 20,000 Leagues Below the Sea sort of theme.
That's cool, man.
Yeah.
Beautiful, beautiful.
So hopefully,
beautiful.
I'll end up filling the other wall eventually. So as you come down, it'll be all
every year.
All artwork, yeah. And then in here, I put up stuff on the wall too. So just a couple of neons, and I've got some artwork here, some Tron artwork, and I've got a flyer there for Banzai Run that was signed by Pat Lawler.
Cool.
Very kind of him to send me that.
That's a good segue. So obviously, yeah. Bonsai Run.
Yeah. So I set up the game in a sort of a horseshoe fashion, so that we've got games on 3 walls. Eventually, the plan is to put a multiplayer main set up here in the middle, but I've just got one of my wood rails sitting here for now. But yeah, so on this wall I've got my D&Ds and a couple of System 11 games, which are Banzai and High Speed.
So one by one, wow.
Yeah, this is my second Banzai Run. The first one I ended up selling after getting this one. Once I got it home, I realized that it was an XR7 playfield, which basically, this was around the era when Williams was developing the diamond coat or diamond plate on their playfield.
The finish, right?
Yeah, which is essentially a clear coat. And what happened was I think they sent out a few Bonsai Runs, some Funhouse, maybe Whirlwinds, I'm not sure, to the different playfield manufacturers, and they had different formulas, and they just had code names for them. XR7 is the code name of the formula that eventually became diamond plate as a trade name. And you'll see on the edge of the playfield, if I were to lift it up, that somebody has sort of written in XR7. And when I compared it to my other one, it was very clear that the whites were bright, and this playfield had a clear coat, even though the production run of these machines was never supposed to. So I guess, I think Lawler said that he sent out maybe like a dozen or less of these to be clear coated.
Right.
And tested. They probably used 2 or 3 of them in their prototype machines. And then whatever was left over would have gone into the early run.
Cool.
And if you understand sort of how the pinball business goes, I think most of the early runs tend to be shipped out for export first. Even today, Stern will ship a lot of the games out to Europe first and Canada. That's why a lot of Canadians will unbox their brand new games even before the Canadians get them. So this game was probably sold to I believe it was sold through Lineal, which is one of the bigger buyers in Canada at the time in Montreal. So it got lucky, I guess, that the XR7 ended up finding its way into this production.
Very cool.
Yeah.
What's next? High Speed?
Yeah, so High Speed was a container game that I got a few years ago. The cabinet was in really beautiful shape and everything was nice on it, so I decided when the CPR playfields came out that I would do a full restore on it. And I did a few custom modifications to it. So there's a clear ramp, which is also made by a gentleman on Pinside. Beautiful ramp, which replaces the old black one, so you could see through it. And the stoplight is usually sitting above the ramp. I relocated it to the back corner, and I made a custom 3D printed yellow overlay to go in front of it. So I'm running it vertically instead of horizontally like it usually is. But I matched the streetlight overlay to the artwork on the playfield.
Cool.
And I also made a custom decal for underneath the ramp so that it ties into the whole road theme a little bit better.
Makes total sense.
Yeah, I put some new plastics on it, and yeah, that's just about it. Yeah,
cool.
Plays nice.
Tron, of course.
Tron, yeah, this was my first new in box game. Still have it. I only ever bought 2 new in box. This and X-Men LE. I ended up selling the X-Men, but Tron is a bit of a dream theme of mine, and yeah, so.
Any mods or anything to it that
yeah, there's a few things. This one has the Eli ramp kit. When he was first developing it, he wanted some beta testers. So there were 2 gentlemen in the U.S. and myself at the time who had volunteered to help out.
Oh, cool.
So I have one of the 3 beta test kits in here. So they were all hand built by him. He also developed the original arcade mod at the time. So it was kind of nice. So if you look underneath, it actually is kind of hand built. It's kind of cool.
Cool.
They're a little brighter, which is the only sort of benefit, I think. They're a little brighter than the ones that he ended up producing in bulk. But aside from that, it's essentially the same. And the code is running off of a little Arduino board. And then there's little things like the plastic protectors are sort of color coded to the left, the blue and the yellow. Obviously the mods here, the upgraded arcade symbol cabinet and the Flynn sign. I added a floating, you can't really see it here, but there's a floating recognizer in the upper left that kind of seems to be flying in.
Cool.
And the light cycles are upgraded as well. I have a few other things I'd probably add to it one day, like the ships kind of flying in over top of the switches, but I think that's about all I did to it. And I think there's a shaker in it too. Yeah.
Cool.
So.
Next is, of course, Adam's Family. Very popular. This
was my very first pin.
Oh, was it really?
Yeah, this is my first machine. This is the machine that will be buried with me, I guess.
Really?
Yeah, this was very a nostalgic purchase. I think, like many people of my generation, I grew up on this game, and sort of a watershed game, I think. Super fun. I know it's a lot of people think it's a little easy, but I just love the integration of the theme, and I've done a lot of mods to it. I'll probably rip off a lot of these mods. I think when I first started collecting, I was just going crazy, slapping things onto.
That's what I feel like I'm doing. Whenever you guys are saying easy, Steve, easy, yeah.
Yeah, this is one game I've held off on restoring because when I do it, I want to do it right. I have a brand new playfield that I want.
Wow, really?
Yeah, and like I said, I'll probably strip off some of the more gaudy mods.
Like, do you think these go?
Yeah, I don't think I'll have those. I have the gold caps on it right now, which are from the gold edition, which I don't particularly like anymore. There's a lot of toys on the playfield, which I'll take off. But yeah, and it's running color D&D. The cabinet's pretty good, so I don't really think I need to do too much. I'll probably need to change the rails and a few things. But yeah, it just needs a playfield swap. And next to it is Fishtails, which was basically in my old arcade when I was, or actually it was a pool hall when I was a kid. We used to play. Adam's Family was the first game that I would put my money in. If it was busy, I would go next and play T2.
Yeah.
And then Fishtails and No Good Gophers. I think NGG is the only of the 4 that I have not managed to collect.
Would you?
No, I think I'm over it.
Yeah?
Yeah, I think I've... at one point I thought it would be nice to rebuild that original lineup that I played as a kid at the old pool hall, but I think I kind of got over the idea of that. So, but these 2 I still enjoy. It's a very tough game. It's a simple game. The rule set's not complex, but it's sort of like along the lines of a BSD, where it's not a complicated game, but it's still very difficult to do well, and really focused on the multi-ball mostly. But there's a lot of cool little modes you can play. Yeah.
Ooh, this guy's smoking a cigar. Yes. Love it.
Yeah.
Let's get into Whitewater, of course, another popular one.
Yeah, Whitewater is one of the few games that I've done a full top-to-bottom restore on. I think when I first got this cabinet, the front panel was being held in place by drywall screws, and when I took them out, the whole panel fell off.
Oh, really?
Yeah, the game was a disaster. So I took it apart. I put in a Merkle playfield, but then I quickly realized that there were some errors in the playfield.
How so?
So the light lock didn't have the white around the text, the orange inside the brim of the hat, and on the posts of the different Boulder awards were missing. So at that point I had to make a hard decision on whether or not I wanted to sand down a brand new reproduction playfield and correct it, but I felt that, if I was going to do it, I should do it right. So I airbrushed all the corrections into the game, and then re-cleared it, and then finished rebuilding the whole game. The game was actually, this game was photographed for Pinball Magazine issue number 2.
Get out of here.
Yeah, so they did a Dennis Nordman. I think I have it here. I could probably find it if you give me a second. So, yeah, they were doing a feature on Dennis Nordman and Greg Freres, who did a lot of the artwork. And I was, actually, I think I have the page marked here.
That's convenient.
Yeah. So I think at the time that they were going to print with this, they had seen my thread on Pinside. So they asked me for photography. Now there are a few mods, obviously, to the game. There's my missing plastic, which I create and I've sold to a few people.
Cool.
That's in the game, and I've changed the flashers from red to orange so that they tied into the boulders a little bit better. But most other stuff is pretty typical. Oh, and the boulder is not stock. But
cool, man. That's a little pinball history. That's cool. Yeah, man.
So it's kind of nice to get that put in.
You get a little recognition, of course.
Yeah, it's fun.
Next, Indiana Jones. Yeah. I've never played, which I can't wait. I've played the newer Stern one, not the Williams one.
Yeah, this was my second machine. After getting Adam's Family, I quickly got the bug. I ended up finding an IJ. I bought this in Colorado. At that time, again, I think a lot of people will associate that being a new collector, you can tend to be a little crazy. And I brought this game in from the U.S., from Colorado Pinball Exchange, I think. And ended up doing some things to it, doing some gold trim, added a few mods. The planes are much more realistic reproductions than the stock ones that are in there. I've added a few little figures in here just to kind of add some interest. But yeah, aside from that, I haven't done too much. One thing I did kind of do that was a little funny is when the 4th movie came out, I added a crystal skull to the top left corner there.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, just to have a little bit of a nod to the 4th game, even though everything in the machine is based on the first 3.
The movies.
First 3 movies, yeah.
Cool, man.
Yeah, so my first wide body, and yeah, still here.
Love it.
Yeah.
Next to it is, and then we start going to the wedge heads.
Yeah, so here we have my wedge heads. I can probably turn them on so you get some better light on them.
And later on, guys, what we'll do is when some more people come over, I'll show a walkthrough with all the games on, and more people here as well.
It's not working. We have a technical issue.
Uh-oh.
I don't know, maybe I pulled the plug when I was down there. Yeah.
That's okay. We'll get to it after anyway. I'm going to show everything lit up. It's more about the game and how you got it. So this is Melody. I don't think I've played this one.
Yeah, Melody is the Add-A-Ball version of Sing Along, I believe. It's a late 60s, mid-60s EM. And Add-A-Balls were created because of certain gambling laws that existed in the northeastern states. So rather than being able to offer a replay, which was considered
it's a form of gambling, right?
Payoff, exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, back in the day, pinball was associated with gambling. So
right.
Location owners would offer payouts for credits. And some of the older wood rails would even pay out something like hundreds of different credits, which you could never play, of course.
Right.
So there were knockdown buttons to be able to get rid of the credits once you...
Interesting.
So in order to get around that, what they did was they created an Add-A-Ball version. So the game starts at 5 or 3, however you've got it set. And then if you play well enough, you can actually add balls. So within the same game, you are rewarded rather than being given a free play.
Cool. So
that was the workaround. So Melody is an uncommon version of Sing Along, which is a little bit more common, but essentially you just have to light up all of the numbers on each of these not gobble holes, sorry, kick-out holes. And if you manage to get all 4 of them lit and get the ball in, it gives you a knock and you get a ball added and it goes back to 0, and then you have to collect those numbers all around the playfield.
Cool.
And what's really cool is once the ball goes in here, it gets kicked out to the next one, the next one, the next one, and then back out. So it has a nice little animation to it. It's a 2-inch flipper game.
Cowpoke, interesting.
Yep, Cowpoke. Again, this is another Add-A-Ball. I think Buckaroo is the replay version, the very popular replay game, and this is less common version of that. And this has a roto target, so the target will spin, and you have to try to make the target to collect these numbers. If you get 4 in a row, any sequence of 4, you'll get a free ball. If you manage to get all of them, I think it kicks out 3 extra balls. Yeah, so that's how that's played.
Cool. I played this, Centigrade 37 play. I actually like this game. It's kind of cool.
Yeah, I think this might have been my first Wedge Head. It was in pretty decent condition. The pinks on it were quite faded when I got it, so I ended up I traced and cut my own stencils, and I repainted the pink on the cabinet too, so let me go all out. And I didn't like how these games had sunken inserts in the ball. It would do funny things to the ball movement, so I ended up clearing it and filling it all in and making it super smooth. So this gameplay is a lot smoother than it used to. And I love the artwork. It's just beautiful artwork. I kind of fell in love with this game. So yeah, very cool. So it was a fun project.
El Dorado. I think I played. No, I don't think I played this one.
So El Dorado is the first game in the series of machines that Gottlieb used this layout for. So if you've heard of, I'm drawing a blank now. I'm sure like Canada Dry is one that's also very rare. There's Solar City, which is a 2-player, I think, and then there's a few others. But they basically rehashed this layout a few different times because of the popularity. I guess it did very well. But El Dorado is the only single player, and probably the more collectible of the group. But I always like the Western theme, and the artwork on it has that nice sort of Western landscape.
That's cool.
Yeah, so one day I'll probably get this cabinet redone as well, but it's in pretty decent shape. It's just a little yellow.
Next is Stern Stars.
Yeah, I bought this game from Rob, another collector. He brought this game back from the dead. I think it was being tossed. It was given to him for free.
Really?
Yeah, it's pretty funny. The cabinet was falling apart. He managed to get a head from a Nugent, I believe, and the body from a Bally, and he figured out a way to get it all working. And then he gave me the playfield, and I did some clear coating for him. And I asked that if he ever sold the game, that I'd like to have it. So
cool, man.
Yeah, it was designed by Steve Kirk. I think it was his first game. Yeah. So I kind of had a thing for Steve Kirk games. My first one was Meteor, and then this one, and then 9-Ball Heroes, which is the other Steve Kirk machine that I have.
It's a good segue. Let's get to 9-Ball.
Yeah.
That's beautiful.
9-Ball, I just finished working on the playfield. I had got this game. Actually, I bought it out of the Southwest U.S. somewhere in Arizona. Got a pretty good deal on it. The seller, it had a lot of wear around these metal inserts. I think I showed it to you a few days ago. It was really down to bare wood in a lot of places, but everything else was really good on it. The glass, the cabinet, everything was really nice. So I thought, not wanting to take the whole thing apart and really go crazy with it, I just wanted to change the drop targets to new. I got a new set of plastics, put some clean rubber on it, but then I did sort of hand touch-ups on all these, and I did some spot clear. And every time I did a little bit of a spot clear, I would sand it smooth and try to sort of blend it in. And then
so it doesn't look almost too vibrant compared to that, right?
Yeah, so the goal was to kind of get the whole playfield with the same sort of sheen, and then I filled in all the black rings to kind of give it a nice, fresh up look. So this is a refresh. You could call it a restore, but it's not really a full-blown restore. But it's a
me adding a sticker, I call it a restore, so I get it. Next to Stargazer, which I know is a very sought-after old Stern.
Stargazer is a very hard to come by game. I actually traded away a Shadow originally to get this machine.
Oh wow, really?
Yes, very hard to come by machine, and ended up keeping this one and doing a restore on it as well. And I wasn't able to save the playfield, unfortunately, because like your Turtles, it had full Mylar. And the Mylar on these Sterns was really hard to remove, so I would have completely destroyed the artwork. So I got the playfield from John Greatwich, one of his runs, and I repainted the cabinet, got some plastics and new targets and so forth, and just got it back to its original condition, or as close as I could, and it plays really nice now.
Beautiful. I can't wait to play it. I've actually criticized saying, where's the rest of it? Because you're like, Steve, you don't understand, because it's the simplicity of the rule sets and collecting the Zodiac, and I'm like, to me, I couldn't find the genius in it, but you're going to show me later and you've explained, so I hope to understand further.
Yeah, and if you really look at most pinball machines, the lower half of the playfield is almost always empty.
Right.
Even in modern games, I mean, there may be ramps crisscrossing over top,
right?
But in reality, in order to have a good shooting game, the lower half really should be empty. I think the only example I see here is probably El Dorado, where it's got sort of a pop bumper down in the lower left.
Right.
But most of the times, you want that openness.
So this is Big Game. Also, we're on to that now.
Big Game was my first trial at a wide body stern. I thought I would hate it, to be honest. I'm not really a big wide body fan for the most part.
What, too floaty?
Yeah, floaty, and also with the 4 flippers, I thought it would be kind of clunky.
Right.
But I thought I'd get it for a little while, and it was in decent shape. I cleaned it up, did a little touch up on the playfield, but just waxed it. I didn't do any clear. But I fell in love with it because what I noticed very quickly is that the openness it makes the game super fast, and there's a lot to do. So you're hitting drop targets, trying to get these numbers to line up and create lines in your bingo boards, and whichever one's lit alternates depending on which pops or slings get hit. So there's a lot of strategy, but each of the 4 flippers does a very different job. They all have different angles to make. So you really if there's a particular shot you want to make, it's best made from a particular flipper. Right. So that sort of interplay is really cool. And then you also have to spell Big Game, which then lights up the bonus here. And then when the X card is lit, the spinner here gets lit. So you can play spinner, you can do spelling, or you can try to fill in these bingo cards. And I never had one of these bingo games either, so that was the other appeal. Catacomb is the other one. I had a chance to buy that or this, and I passed on the Catacomb to a friend, and decided that Big Game was really more my speed.
Cool, man. Next is Ali. Wow, cool.
Yeah, Ali. This is my second Ali. This one's a little nicer than the other one, but again, an uncommon stern. You don't see it very often. And when I got the opportunity to pick it up, I thought I'd give it a shot for a little while, and it's become a fun player here. Again, it doesn't have any overarching exploit in terms of some sterns you just have to rip the spinner over and over again and you can just rack up the points, but here you really want to try to spell the greatest and then collect these targets to add value to those inserts every time you collect it, and then try to get the extra ball. I guess if you spell greatest, then you can get the extra ball over at the rope-a-dope loop. So
do you think this game's gone up now that he's passed away?
I don't think that's had a big impact.
Really? No,
I don't think so. Yeah, I think they always sell for what they sell for, and that's pretty much it. Probably in a couple of $1,000 range. Maybe a really nice example like this would be a little more, but I think that's what they go for. Makes sense. Next is 8-ball, which is kind of like a grease, like with the fawns or whatever, isn't it? Yeah, there was a bit of a rip-off. So this is the only Bally left in my line here. So this wall used to be primarily all for Ballies. Wow. And then I found myself gravitating more towards the stern of the era. So they're all, if you know the two, the stern basically copied the Bally system. Oh, okay. So all the boards, everything are interchangeable for the most part. Oh, that's convenient. Yeah. But I had a really nice Centaur. I had a 8-ball Deluxe and a few others in here, and this is the only one that sort of survived. It's a little bit more like an EM. It plays really mean. It has the chimes in it. I like the pool theme. I've always liked pool themes as well, and for whatever reason, it just doesn't play like some of the other. I find some of the other Bally's a little bit more floaty, whereas the sterns are faster. This one is super fast, and just a really good feeling game. Hopefully, the Fathom will also be able to survive. That's true. Yeah, so at least I'll have a couple of classic Bally's. Yeah. Very nice. Yeah. Then next, I know that this is in a sense folder. Which one's this? This is Heatwave. It's a Williams. So Williams, like I mentioned upstairs, they were really mostly doing horsey games and pitch and bats. Mm-hmm. But into the mid-'60s, they started to come back into pinball, and they created reverse wedge heads, which is, I don't know what the marketing ploy was. I thought maybe since the wedge heads back here sort of angle upwards, they created a head style that was the reverse of that. Maybe they thought that operators would like to wedge them in between. Ah, okay. So create almost like a key effect. Yeah, that's cool. Yeah, so you can kind of see it over here. So the head angles down. Oh, I see. Yeah. Yeah, I've never seen this game before. Huh. Yeah, so Rob over at Credit Dot, Spiragno, he repainted the cabinet for me. We did a little bit of back and forth. I was doing some clear coating for him. He did some cabinets for me. Right. And then I'm just sort of putting it all back together, and I want to get this one upstairs once I have another slot, and just do a little bit of touch up on the playfield. It's a really smart game. It's sort of a precursor to Centigrade 37 because it has a thermometer. Oh, cool. As well, but it's 10 years prior, I believe, more or less. And it's really fun how it has these moving targets that swing back and forth, and it has some rollovers. And at the beginning of the game, everything will raise the thermometer, but as the thermometer starts to get higher and higher, the parts that will raise it start to shut off. So the game gets progressively harder, which is
cool.
is a real feature in the EM. So I thought that was really fun. It's a great playing game. Even has a cool little drop target that comes out the middle, a little sun. And as you get the thermometer up higher, it also raises the value of the drop target. So the name of the game is to get the thermometer up top.
So that's the incentive.
And then hit that drop target as many times as you can.
Cool.
Yeah.
And then this is one of the root rails that will eventually go upstairs, right?
Yeah. This is a very
I've never seen this either.
No. It's a rather special wood rail because I think my guess would be there's less than 4 or 5 of them in the world still.
Really? Wow.
Yeah. A gentleman here, a prominent collector, had this in his collection for a while. And I always loved space themes. If you look around, like stars, and I have a space shuttle somewhere else. And but I really love vintage space themes, like things that were done almost before people went into space. So you kind of see this art.
Yeah, they like this is gonna be like in 1999 we're gonna do this, and they're flying, and we can't even get our car working.
Yeah, this sort of like Betty Grable type. So this is sort of like what travel will be like in the future. It looks like they're airline attendants, and there's rocket ships and hovercrafts and all sorts of cool things. So this is called Skyway, and it had some really neat features. This was a Harry Williams design. So you would plunge the ball, and you're trying to get the ball into these slots in order to build up the bonus. You're actually, if you get it to the top, you're actually able to collect the bonus, which was unheard of in the EM of this era. And also it had a ramp. It was one of the first games that had a ramp. I think it might have been the second one. If you can get the ball into this slot, the kicker will kick the ball, it'll flip it over, and it'll lock the ball into this slot here.
Oh, neat.
If you do that enough times, the ball gets fed back into the trough and it gets back into play. Also, if the balls do get to go through here, there's a second shooter lane, and there's an auto kicker that fires the ball back into play. So for an EM, really super well featured, and it only had one flipper, 2 flipper buttons. They only work for the one flipper, and you can't hold the ball. It's an impact flipper. So it just flips once, but there's a hidden kicker in here. So you can do a lot of nudging to try to get the ball into the kicker. The kicker will then shoot the ball up. And a lot of indirect shots. Like you can't directly shoot for these things. You kind of have to sort of nudge the ball into them. So just a beautiful game. And I managed to get a repro backlash made up because the original one was sort of on its last legs. So BG Resto made that for me. And yeah, so I'm hoping to touch this up and clean it up really well. Get it running really nicely, and it'll be yeah, not quite one of a kind, but a very rare piece. And there's a few other I have in storage, like Spot Bowler and a few others that are fairly Rocket Ship. So Rocket Ship is a very similar theme to this. A little bit newer though. It had at that point they'd gone to metal legs, but everything else is still wood. So yeah, hopefully that garage will one day be able to house these really nice classics. Cool, man. Well, Drano, thank you, man. Anything, what do you, if you can have one more game or anything that you really want that you don't have yet? Oh boy, that's always a hard question. Yeah. I have a bit of a short list of games that I keep my eye out for now, because I've already gone through a lot. If you go into my Pinside account and you see, or even my Pinball Owners, all the games that I've already sold. Right. I mean, I've been through a lot of games that I'd probably like to get a Twilight Zone back one day, maybe. But new games, I'd like to get a Godzilla. I think that'd be a fun game to have for a little bit. Don't know if it'll be a keeper. A Williams Nags, which is one of those horsey games that it has 5 or 6 pop bumpers that actually rotate all the time in the playfield. Oh, neat! Fantastic piece. Love to get one of those. But at this point, anything really rare, because I'm into doing a lot of the restoration work. So I think if I can find something that's rare that I can maybe save or put back into operation for other people to enjoy. I bring a lot of my games to my studio so that people at the office can enjoy them too. So cool. Right now I've got a fun house there, a spin out, a couple of other machines. Yeah. So I think yeah, anything that's rare, cool, I'll bring in just to see if I can get it, breathe some life back into it. And if it's a keeper, I'll hold on to it. If not, I'll let it go. Cool, man. It's been a pleasure. Thanks so much for having us. I know we're still early and we're waiting for the guys, so maybe I'll leave a little time in the video when everyone's on and the games are on as well, hearing the game. So thank you again. No we'll sign out, maybe at the end of the night, but it's been a pleasure, man. Thank you so much for having me and showing me around. Awesome. A pleasure always. Thanks, sir. All right, take care, man. Thank you.